Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Chicago-based jazz singer, songwriter, entrepreneur, and educator Michele Thomas. She opened up about her new 2022 CD, The Assumption, in a time of upheaval where cultural norms, relationships, and authority are being questioned. On this thought-provoking third album, it shows her embracing the full spectrum of her artistry with the stylistically cohesive and creative adventure that goes into the entirety of it. She has a great jazz spirit, and she opens up about her journey and so much more. Enjoy.
Good to talk to you. Hey, thanks for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The Assumption is your latest album, and I want to know from you, before we get into this, it's been a very strange time on planet Earth for the last 2 years, and there's been a lot that's happened. So does this album, what's the significance? How relieving is it to have an album to come out right now?
It's extremely relieving and just a really big feeling of accomplishment and just gratitude, because none of this had to happen. I think when we were about to go into the studio exactly in 2020, it was the week that basically the world shut down. We were scheduled to go into the studio around the third week of March. Just the week prior, we'd already been hearing for weeks before that about the virus, but nothing concrete just yet until mid-March, where in Chicago, our mayor was talking about shutting down restaurants and a lot of activities that were going on. A lot of us musicians here in the Chicago scene literally were about to go into gigs that weekend, and it all got shut down. So, and from there, I always just marvel at how much we thought this was kind of temporary. I mean, I marvel at how much we didn't know at that point of what we were entering into, and that it makes it that much more impactful that we made it here, that this album got released, because somehow, thank God, with all of us living through it, for my group and the band and the musicians I was working with, we recorded during that pandemic. We engineered and mastered the album during that pandemic and came out on the other side, basically, at this point.
What did you learn about yourself over this time, which we had more time with ourselves, that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger as you promote this new album and play more live shows?
I mean, I feel like I'm still learning those lessons as we go, but I think I learned in just the ability of what resilience truly means. Like you get if you haven't been through something this terrible and you're watching the world around you and you're seeing people even go through worse things than you're going through, that has made me through my life look at my own life and have to put any of the struggles I am having in perspective and begin to take stock of what's most important. You start kind of shedding those things that you thought that you worried about before, or that you thought were so important, whether it was, your job status or even maybe your money situation or financial situation, what that says of you, your activities and your friends and your relationships in your life. Things can start to become a lot clearer in those moments when you're kind of faced with this unfortunate, just existential dread at that time. But I think I was learning about myself what was most important to me. I'm continuing to learn about what's at the core of life for me, and this life that I have, and this precious life that, could have just as easily been taken from me during this time. I'm learning about what will be most important and what I leave behind, in this life. That's just been really trying to as much as I can, be a person who's exhibiting just love and light and being of help in the world, leaving something good behind in the world, especially with the crazy times we're living in, especially with the terrible times and so much harm that's coming to people. Whatever I can do to be of service in these circumstances.
So you have a stellar lineup of musicians on this album, and I'm curious, What are you hoping the listener gets from this project?
I hope, and I feel as if I've been already receiving a lot of feedback in terms of what people have been receiving, is just thinking about relationships, thinking about what trust actually looks like when it's real and when it's tangible. I've been in the last few weeks just hearing from a lot of people who came to our live CD release concert last week at the Jazz Showcase. You know, people came up to me to tell me how touched they were by just the stories, because of the original music that I wrote on the album. I wrote about my grief, and I wrote about my memories of my father and my mother and my sister, who I all lost some years ago, and my father in particular, who I lost when I was a young child, about 12 or 13 years old. And a lot of people were just telling me of how touched they were just to hear those stories, how it helped them to reflect on their own relationships in their lives, just becoming a lot more crystal clear about when those relationships are healthy, when they are balanced, when the dynamic is just, it's life-affirming. It's something that helps them to grow and helps others to grow. I really hope that we all start understanding as a society what trust looks like, and we stop assuming that it's there. You know, when I'm looking at issues of race relations, and then people are wondering, like, well, why are we having such a hard time in this country? But no one's really willing to look at the fact that there's no trust there, and there's a reason for that. And if it's not there, that we start learning about what it means to create it again, or create it for the first time in a lot of instances, whatever it may be, from politics to race relations. And that first starts, it has to start on a personal level. It has to start on just like you looking in your own life and seeing what makes good relationships, and when that trust is not there, what has to be done, how it needs to be addressed.
So how did jazz and music become your life? How did the pursuit begin to end up with your career today?
I mean, I think I'm like maybe a lot of people. I don't know if it was like crystal clear at the very beginning, although the family I was born into was extremely musical. I grew up with music. I grew up immersed in music and gospel music specifically. My father was a minister, and my mother was a self-taught pianist who played for church, played in her town of Little Rock, Arkansas. My dad was from Stamps, Arkansas. When I was born, I was already born into a family with a huge gospel record collection and listening to like Chicago gospel radio every week and watching shows on TV. And my older brothers and sisters, because there's of the six of us, there's a big like 10-year gap between me and my older brothers and sisters. So they were already, a couple of them were already in college at that time. They had joined gospel choirs in their colleges, and they would let me tag along and hear. I was around gospel music all the time. It was just I don't know, it was just innocuous to me. I was in it. I was singing in church. I was singing all the time. As I got older and my parents saw that it was sticking in terms of the interest in music, they enrolled me in piano lessons, and I would eventually join some Chicago choir public school groups that was very involved with. Go to a high school of the fine arts here at Lincoln Park in Chicago, where I met some of my most impactful teachers and mentors there, and get a scholarship to a conservatory here. And it just kind of went on, and I sometimes laugh because even after all that, once I graduated from high school, I was just like, am I going to do this professionally? Like I was still questioning at that point. It's like, I don't know if I want to do this professionally or if I have what it takes. But I just kept following that journey. And along the way, in terms of the jazz influence that came during high school, it came a little before high school too, but I just feel like in the world of gospel music, especially for my generation and when we were coming up, you were already starting to see so many jazz and soul and R&B influence come into contemporary gospel music at that time. So I feel like I was always being exposed to it. I just didn't know to call it jazz right away. And then by the time I got in high school, I joined my high school jazz band. And that's where I actually started practicing repertoire and practicing Great American Songbook repertoire. And a great teacher at that time introduced me to Ella Fitzgerald for the first time, giving me a cassette tape of her playing with Joe Pass. And I was hooked. So I just kept following that path into college, getting into jazz combos, getting in the jazz band. Pretty much, by the time I graduated from college, I was on my way, and I knew at that point that I wanted to pursue jazz as like the focus of my music. It wasn't the only genre that I would be involved in, but I knew that would be the main path that would bring everything and bring all my influences into it.
So what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What do you look forward to every day?
Just listening to music is still the same thing as it was when I was younger. Just listening to music, discovering music, being inspired just in the creativity that it always sets off a spark when I'm hearing something new, and I always look at jazz as something that's progressive and something that's liberating to the spirit. So whenever I discover, whether it's older artists or old albums, or if I'm discovering a new artist right now, I'm always looking for that kind of spark, that kind of flip in my tummy a little bit, or the hair standing up on my arm, that lets me know it's like, wow, that the energy and the spirit of this music is there, and I want to find a way to create that in my own life, to create that kind of force in my own life, and that's the biggest thing to try to like hold on to, because I mean the career part of having a music career is a lot of grunt work and a lot of administrative, and booking and managing yourself and everything, and that can suck the life out of you if you allow it. So I try my best to have that like kind of holding on to. It's just like, here's the why behind why I'm willing to go through all this grunt work and all this work, because at the end of the day, if I get to be on a stage, if I get to be with fellow musicians who are incredible and also spark that spirit in me, that's the reason. That's the reason I'll keep doing this.
So as we start returning to live music and things are getting, activities picking up in the world, what do you hope we all realize about the power of live music that we've been away from largely for the last 2 years?
Oh my gosh, I'm hoping that we're seeing it already, that just being starved of that the last couple of years, that our world and our society has come to appreciate that much more and understand the value of it, because we see what it's done to us to be isolated for so long, and isolated away from just that human contact in the ways that we took it for granted before now. I'm hoping that it's going to be a feeling for people where, I'm trying to think of an analogy in my head, but just something that's like its own inoculation of sorts, that no one ever forgets how vital this is and how it makes them feel and how much life it brings to them to be able to see live music, to see live musicians. I hope it's that much more kind of overwhelming now when people feel it, and perhaps we can come to having a bigger value for it than we did before. Maybe we won't take it for granted as much before, and maybe you'll see it grow. Maybe you'll see live performing growing around our country and everywhere. That's what I hope, at least. So
everyone has a perception of you. They have an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. Who do you think you are?
I like that question.
Good.
I think I am. There's just so many ways to kind of answer that, but the simplest thing I could only just come to my mind right now is just that I'm human. I'm learning. I I hope to be and strive to be as compassionate as I can towards myself and towards other human beings. I strive to be a student my whole life, like just being open to continuing to learn and grow. I think, well, I mean, I guess I try to just study what I do and what the results are. It's like I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. I look at what the outcomes of that have been, and it's been a community of beautiful students who have come away and made me feel affirmed in that I'm doing the right thing and I'm working the right way. So I take from that compassion part I must be right about. I just think I'm also a person who's learned to persevere through a lot of struggle, a lot of grief, through abuse, I've grown and survived those things. So I guess I would call myself a survivor as well, and I call myself a thinker and a seeker. So I guess those are parts of who I think I am, and I probably am bound to discover more of who I am if I'm living longer, and I'm blessed to be able to live longer.
Michele, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz to talk about the album and your life. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity, Joe. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest singers and players in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Michele for her time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.